Hi, I'm Jared Rosskamp, BASF Technical Service Rep covering Missouri and Southern Illinois. So in this video, I'd like to discuss with you the value of layering residuals, and is it even really worth it? That's a question I get a lot. In my geography that I cover, my answer is obviously yes, because of this guy right here. Water hemp is a very prolific and troublesome weed in my geography, and because of that, this is where we really see the value of these layering residual programs in corn or in soybeans be very, very effective. So what we know about this weed is that it can be pretty tough to kill, and the easiest way to control it is really to prevent it from coming up and out of the soil. Because once it gets up, it grows very quickly, and it creates a lot of growing points that we have to knock out with our post-emerge herbicides, meaning that the bigger this weed gets, the more challenging it is, and that's why we've utilized a residual strategy for many years now to keep this weed at bay. So thinking about water hemp, remember that it has a long window of emergence and that it's very prolific. So when we miss one, we're thinking anywhere from 200,000 up to 1 million seeds per female plant left in that field, which continues to perpetuate our problem when we're trying to fight and combat water hemp. So all of these reasons are reasons that we want to minimize our escapes and try and prevent water hemp from getting up. They got a long window, and in my geography, we can see water hemp emerge as early as April and all the way through, the August and into early September timeframe, meaning that this layering residual concept of putting these protective barriers down more than once helps prevent that weed from coming up and out of the ground and makes us more successful in having clean fields at the end of the year. The second thing to remember about water hemp is it grows really fast, and if we think about relying only on a post-emerge strategy, most of even our effective herbicides have got a labeled weed height on water hemp of 3 to 4 inches, which is very small. And in a soybean canopy like this, and as we start to grow through the year, we may not see those water hemp until it's a little bit too late for those to be effective. Again, another value of planting that residual and getting it out early and preventing those water hemp from coming up to provide success in your weed control program. For growers that I've had use Outlook or Residual, which would be our two post-emerge products that we use in soybeans to layer that residual, some of the comments that they've had back to me have included that they have a more flexible window to put that second shot of herbicide on. They're not trying to find that right window when a lot of the weeds are up. They're able to go out maybe before any of the weeds are up or only when they have a few and layer that second blanket on there to really be more successful at the end of the year. The other one that I've had, and I've actually had growers split fields with and without layered residuals, and by the end of the year, especially in a wet year like we saw in 2021, we start to see these differences where we've got that blanket of protection keeping those late emerging water hemp from coming through and being a weedy escape that sets seeds. Some of the data that we found shows the value of adding that residual in there in reducing escapes. If we think about the money that it would take to implement this residual in your post-pass, it's typically money well spent for reducing these escapes. If we think more of a long-term strategy, because it's really easy to think about 1 year at a time, and in soybeans, water hemp is quite an eyesore, so we tend to react more when we see that to going and trying to rescue this. But if we really want to be successful in mitigating our water hemp pressure year over year, we also need to remember that layered residuals or two-pass programs in corn also helps mitigate our risk and our weed pressure from water hemp. In the corn, we see a lot of people still use a one-pass program, and moving to that two-pass program again helps minimize those late escapes that you often see with the combine when you're harvesting corn and that seed set that occurs. So another way to help mitigate your water hemp stress would be to utilize products like Armazon Pro in your corn to help layer that blanket of residual in there, preferably in a two-pass program where you're putting down a foundation residual like Verdict or an atrazine premix down before or at planting, and then following it with a product like Armazon Pro. We've seen cleaner fields at the end of the year and fewer escapes. Why this is all important is anytime I can reduce the amount of escapes out there, it reduces the amount of seed that water hemp setting back in my field and perpetuating my problem. Just remember that even a female water hemp plant that's growing in competition with soybeans can produce up to 200,000 seeds. That really starts to multiply pretty quickly. If you really want to step up your game, aside from using that second post-pass. And again, Outlook and Residual would be two great options for that in your soybeans, or even Armazon Pro in your corn. If you want to step up your game beyond chemicals to really take a hold and knock water hemp out in your fields, it's really all about minimizing those escapes and getting them out of there before they set seeds. Sort of like an eradication program like people have seen with shattercane over the years and even other insects. It's a zero tolerance policy. Two-pass programs and those layering residuals really have a lot of value if that's your mentality, because it's a lot less escapes that you have to handle. Whether you're going to go hand rogue those or even continue with chemical treatments, adding that second residual in there really minimizes those escapes, and most of the time you see fields that are way cleaner than that 98% that we saw in the data there I just presented. At the end of the day, if you're not considering using Outlook or Residual or another post-residual in your soybeans, you should really look at what value it can bring to your farm. And in corn, if you really fight water hemp, moving from a one-pass to a two-pass program has shown significant improvements on final weed control at the end of the year and reducing that seed set. Things like Armazon Pro could maybe be a fit on your farm on keeping water hemp at bay. And I think at the end of the day, as you try layered residual programs in both your corn and soybeans, you're going to see long-term success on your acres.